please welcome Martin from Enride, Dennis from SoarChain, Favio from Coreum, and Theo from Open Knowledge Protocol. So thank you guys and welcome to today's real world use cases panel. I'm your host again, Adam Wozni, head of community from Overclock Labs, the founders of the Akasha Network. I'm joined by 4 fantastic guests from Open Knowledge Protocol, SoarChain, Coreum, and Enride, Martin, Theo, Favio, and Dennis. Thank you guys for being here. Today we're going to be talking about Web3 use cases, crypto skeptics, which I think is going to be fun, Web2 versus Web3 products, and some lesser known crypto use cases. But before we get into any of that, and to make sure that we're running on time here, I wanted to quickly introduce our guests. So starting with Martin, could you let the audience know who you are, your background, and what you do at Enride?
Sure. So I'm the co-founder of Enride, which is a peer-to-peer ride-hailing protocol. So you can kind of think of it as a decentralized version of Uber. And so we also have an app which we're testing at this conference, and we're giving out free rides tonight at the after parties, so check us out. Yeah, and before Enride, I was working as a developer for a number of blockchain projects, and specializing on consensus algorithms. And I kind of got frustrated with all the complexity. You know, we were building all these super complicated systems, and no one was building consumer applications for them. And so that's why I sort of decided to start working on that myself.
Very cool. How can people get a hold of those free rides? Because I'm going to need one after tonight's party. I'm not going to lie.
You can download the app. It's on test flight, or just speak to one of us later, and we'll help you get set up. Yeah.
Perfect. Definitely going to take you up on that offer.
Cool.
Same questions to you, Dennis. Who you are, your background, and what you do at SoarChain.
Yeah. I'm Dennis. I'm the co-founder and CTO of SoarChain. SoarChain is an app chain, a Cosmos SDK app chain, specifically designed to fit mobility needs, to provide interoperability and an open development environment for mobility applications, which is very real life, real world, which contains a lot of real world problems. So yeah, that's pretty much
Very cool. I think I asked you this question. We were actually on a similar panel at Adam Berlin the other day. But I always think it's interesting to hear what people's families think they do. Do you ever explain it to your family? Do they have any idea what you do?
I mean, I said the same thing. I mean, I've been educating them for about 10 years, since like about crypto and all these stuff. So they think I'm doing something like Ethereum for cars. So it's pretty much on point.
Oh, you're Bitcoin for cars. I get it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Favio, same questions to you. Who you are, background, and what you do.
My name is Favio. I work at Coreum. Coreum is a layer 1 built on Cosmos as well, like in any other project here, but we focused on smart tokens is one of our flagship developments, and it basically allows developers to issue new tokens with a set of programmable like possibilities in an easier way that you would normally do in other protocols. And in that sense, our vision is to provide the tools for them to extend these functionalities with AwesomWasm contracts. And the use cases are, you know, sky's the limit in that when it comes to, for example, peer-to-peer insurance products, programmable assets that can be programmed for example, asset minting that is controlled by access control lists. You can do a lot of customization, and that's what we're focusing on, just providing this to developers to build applications like, for example, Enride, that it's very interesting, and we hope to see more of that soon.
Very cool. Cool. And finally, Theo, wouldn't leave you out. Who you are, your background, and what you do at Open Knowledge Protocol.
Yeah, so I'm Theo from OKP4. So I'm head of ecosystem, doing strategy on many things, from the product to the token to the partnerships to the fundraising. I mean, and what we're building basically is a governance infrastructure. It's an app chain as well, a governance infrastructure for the off-chain world. So it enables to share anything, any data, any algorithm in any way you want. So you program the rules you want on chain, and builders basically can build applications on top of the shared data and algorithm. So it's a bit abstract, but it enables many new things in the real world as well. And I got involved into crypto basically on an economic point of view. microeconomic, because I realized that through blockchain, you could align the personal interest with the collective one. Basically, Bitcoin is what it does. You have a personal interest to secure the network. And Bitcoin is very simple, but then the first application came out in Ethereum, and it enabled many, many new things, and maybe to incentivize and to have a personal interest to do something good for society at large. And so it relates to real-world use cases, and that's pretty cool, and I think that's where we're going, so I'm here.
Very cool. How long have you been there?
How long?
How long have you been at OK? I'm going to start doing the acronym. OKP4? Is that
Yeah, that's it. So I joined 3 years ago. So we started with the use cases, basically, with the company in the middle as a trusted intermediary. And 2 years ago, we started building our own chain to remove the company from the middle and to basically coordinate people through the chain instead of legal paperwork and this kind of
Nobody wants paperwork.
Yeah.
So just to kind of level set, I want to kick off our conversation. I just wanted to start with the definition of use case, because everyone hears the term, but you're like, okay, everyone thinks probably 10 different people, 10 different answers, right? So Webster's actually defines a use case as a specific situation or scenario in which a product, technology, or solution can be applied to solve a particular problem or fulfill a specific need. Makes sense, right? So with that as our backdrop, I wanted to kind of get into each of your projects and their use cases. Maybe starting down at the end with Dennis, what exactly are some use cases with your project?
Yeah, so the idea of SourceChain is to basically include all the actors in the mobility space or automotive industry to meet at the same grounds in terms of the interoperability and also the incentive structure. It is a very important aspect. Right now, the problem is that there is no incentive structure, and thus the ecosystem is very fragmented. And this really blocks the way of innovation, especially an open application ecosystem, which would actually solve many of the problems in mobility, which, like a great example, is actually the Enride. It is actually a use case. So we're basically there to become the decentralized physical infrastructure network for mobility and to enable countless applications to solve mobility's problems.
Cool. Moving on to Theo.
Yeah, so what we're building basically is in terms of use cases as solving problems. So we're not creating specific applications, we're making new things possible. And the things we're solving, it's three things. The first is the lack of trust when you share data and algorithms, especially private data. There is a very strong lack of trust. I don't want to give you my private data because you will do something bad maybe with it. So this is one. Also the lack of incentives. So today it's very difficult for builders to create the right incentives model, to create the right tokens and stuff. So we're creating all the tools to make that easy and to define the rules attached to this incentives mechanism. And the third one is the composability in the off-chain world, that every database, every infrastructure is quite siloed. It's kind of siloed, and it's very difficult for them to interact with each other. So we are creating this agnostic layer for enabling them to basically interact with each other to create new data sets and new sources of knowledge that can be leveraged by any application. So we're making new things. We are making developers able to do new things and create new kind of use cases through crypto.
Very cool. Two great use cases so far, and this is all leading somewhere. You're going to find out here in a second. Martin, what about you? Use cases?
Yeah, so Enride operates in the same kind of use cases as SourceChain, obviously. What we're doing is a system to match drivers with riders, and the intention is to enable the creation of apps, like decentralized version of Uber, Deliveroo, last mile delivery, these types of things. And the cool thing is that all the apps that implement this protocol are interoperable, and they share the same pool of drivers. So that reduces a massive barrier to entry. So one of the things that we're trying to, sorry, I forgot, I lost my train of thought, but
Solve for.
yeah, exactly. That's the use cases that we're solving for. Yeah.
Right. Cool. And Favio?
So I think I can do it in two parts. From an L1 perspective, like Coreum, what it's trying to solve for developers is to make it more easy and secure to token issuance and being able to use advanced minting properties directly on-chain and just from the get-go. And I guess from a user standpoint, I have to talk a little bit about our background. I would say before Coreum, the Sologenic Development Foundation is kind of like one of the backers of the project. And on that side of things, we built the leading the leading ecosystem on XRP. Nobody really built on XRP back then. This was 2 years ago. But we really saw an opportunity, and we built a DEX, which is, I would say it's the largest trading volume on that chain. And what I'm trying to get at is the problem we were trying to solve there is to bring tokenized assets such as commodities, securities, ETFs, stocks, traditional finance assets into the blockchain, and kind of like tearing down the wall between these assets and blockchain-based assets like cryptocurrencies, stablecoins. So we built an asset tokenization platform there. And we still have that as the regulated side of the company, of course, because it has to have a license to operate and whatnot. And what I'm trying to get at is that when we built this L1, this Coreum, we wanted to give this functionality to control the tokens issuance from the get-go from an L1 perspective. And to simplify it, the vision is to embed smart contracts within tokens so they can execute functions independently while operating on the chain storage. Yeah.
Got it. So I just heard 4 fantastic use cases, but now it's time for the crypto skeptic to enter the room. Everyone boo. Boo. No, come on, you can do boo. Yeah, we don't like the crypto skeptic. So diving a little bit deeper into what we were just talking about. So Molly Wood, everyone knows Molly Wood, Warren Buffett, and Stephen Dahl, that guy. They argue crypto is a thing looking for a use case, right? Everyone's heard this argument before, right? A recent tweet from Stephen Dahl, quote, "The crypto ideology is the flat eartherism equivalent of finance, a complete belief in absurdities untempered by any evidence to the contrary, so that a few grifters can defraud the public and enrich themselves. Crypto is all a scam," end quote. Bold words from a man yelling at the clouds on Twitter. Am I right, guys? But I kind of want to get your opinions on this. What do you say to the skeptics that argue, crypto is a scam, that is a thing in search of a use case? You guys just all described 4 use cases. Do you guys take offense to those comments? Maybe start with you, Favio.
I think the first thing I would say to this person would be if they actually know how the Federal Reserve of their own currency, for example, the US, works, like what parameters do they use to print money and whatnot. Like 10 years ago, a dollar was worth something different than what it's worth today. And I'm sure like if you ask this person, he would not be able to explain what the parameters. And if you talk about blockchain, right, all of the protocols have this on-chain. We know what are the rules for tokens to be issued, if it's a deflationary, if it's an inflationary blockchain, everything's transparent. So I think the first thing crypto is solving is transparency and just democratizing the access to information and yeah, that money in general. Yeah.
Solves it, yeah. Snaps to that. Martin, what are your thoughts? Did you take offense to those comments?
No, not at all. And I think it's funny because I actually had the pleasure of having beers with Stephen some years ago in London. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and actually at the time they had just closed a funding round for his blockchain startup, and he wasn't that critical back then, so, I think something happened along the way. But no, more seriously, I don't take offense, obviously, in what he says, and I think what I would say to him is just to look around and it's an observation that there's cool people building cool stuff, and we're all here to build the products that we want to use, the internet that we want to have, and that's what we're here for. So,
yeah. Theo, thoughts?
Yeah, my answer is okay, boomer. I mean, the obvious answer. No, seriously, I don't take offense. I think I understand where that comment may come from. I mean, the main use case in crypto is still speculation. So, I mean, I understand why they say that, but I mean, it's missing the forest for the trees. Is that the right expression? It's because we're building something new. There is a lot of experiments, and of course, a lot of them fail. I mean, if we can, DeFi is a lot of crazy experiments, and it basically started with programmable money, and now we have all kind of use cases, and the composability enable different protocols to interact with each other. I mean, the Terra thing, for example, when it happened, Terra is kind of beautiful in how it was built. It's just that it was not resilient enough, and it happened. It was a kind of also. I mean, you can talk about tokenomics, but it's also kind of Ponzinomics. Like it's always this fine limit between what is finance and what, or is it a Ponzi or is it not? I mean, but there is some virtue to it. I think through these experiments, we are building, I guess, the building blocks for what's coming tomorrow in a more digitalized world where AI takes over. I mean, the money of AI, the internet money, won't be dollars in a bank account. It will be programmable, and especially as the world gets more interconnected even more. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's here to stay, and I think we're all here building and innovating, so it will stick. So I don't take offense.
Yeah, he just needs to attend more AwesomeWasm events, in my opinion. Dennis, any quick thoughts closing up on this?
I also don't get offended by this. Obviously, these are like old people, or like, as you said, okay boomer. But I also see where that's coming from, because we've seen a lot of projects maybe without any utility or without any real life use case, I'd say. And people were just rushing to it just to get some 100x gains and profits. So I see where that's coming from. But with all that being said, haven't these people using like old economy financial instruments and stuffs, are they scam? I mean, that's like a question. So I think the real value is to show the utility of what we're doing, and most importantly, to solve the real-life problems, because that's also kind of supports their thesis, because also in many projects that we've seen in the past, they're saying that, okay, we're doing this in a Web3 way, but is doing it in a Web3 way actually solving the problem? Or are you doing it for the sake of doing it that way? So that's also like another aspect of it. And I think, in my opinion, the perspective of these people could change if we were to show them that this problem wasn't solvable if it wasn't for blockchain or like distributed ledger systems.
Yeah, I really like the Web 2, Web 3 use case, and I'll get into that in a little bit. I don't want to get too far ahead, but I kind of want to expand a little bit. We talked a little bit about the problems your projects are solving. We talked a little bit about the skeptics and what their thoughts are. There's some pretty well-known use cases in crypto already, DeFi applications, NFTs, cross-border payments, gaming. These are some pretty well-known ones, but from where you guys stand, what are some interesting use cases that maybe haven't caught too much attention yet, or maybe haven't been noticed by the general, Web3 community or Web 2 community? Is there anything that sticks out in your minds in terms of use cases with crypto that either haven't been developed or maybe just aren't getting recognized quite yet? And maybe we can start with you again, Favio.
Well, first things I think for people to stop seeing it as a scam is because they need to see the problem being solved without actually knowing it is Web3, right? You need to look at the interface as if it is actually something you could use every day and get used to. And right now, like you mentioned, there's a lot of DeFi. Well, I wouldn't say right now. I would say in the past 2 years, those were the headlines, right? Like DeFi protocols, NFT marketplaces. And now I think the next buzzword would be this type of use cases that are just bringing Web 2 and Web 3 together. Having said that, can you repeat the question? I just got lost a little bit.
No, you're fine. I was just taking notes because I want to follow up on something you said. But what are some use cases that are currently available in crypto that maybe just haven't caught on or just are lesser known?
I still haven't seen anyone do event ticketing, like mass event ticketing right. I still see, for example, Ticketmaster as a platform that is completely centralized, and the problem that scalpers generate, the problem bots buying tickets right off that they go on sale. I think there's something there that I'm sure someone has figured it out, but I still haven't seen it like mass adopted in a way. I would say that tickets. Then I would say custom rewards programs. This is something that I've seen in some cases, but I haven't seen a big company adopt this and really, for example, assign a soulbound token to each employee, and this soulbound token, which could be fungible, not fungible, unlocks certain rewards on e-commerce stores, on partner stores. There's a whole ecosystem to build there, and that ties up to one of the use cases that we're trying to work on, which is just programmable blockchain assets. I'll leave room for everyone else to speak.
No, you're
Pass it
good.
on to you.
Yeah, so some of the projects I'm really interested in are at the networking layer, things like Helium or NKN, because they solve a real problem in terms of like building decentralized mobile applications. Peer-to-peer mobile applications is difficult because normally mobile devices don't have a public IP address, so they can't expose a server over the regular internet. And there are ways to get around that, centralized sort of solutions to that. But these projects like NKN and Helium are solving that using blockchain in a decentralized way, and I think that's really cool.
Cool.
Yeah, for me, I love projects who try to have an impact on the real world. And I mean, a crazy example was Steppen back in the craze. That was this small app where people could just walk and earn tokens. I mean, it's pretty useless, let's say, but still, it had an impact in some ways, and it incentivized people to do something. And I think it's a great experiment. And I think now there are a lot of use cases that are trying. Let's say it's not working as the scale we want yet, but for example, let's say Demo is one example of a project that try to incentivize data collection about vehicle data. Maybe it's also aligned with SourceChain Vision. There is a project that's called Golden that do curation and data of knowledge graph. So let's say a global open Wikipedia that is incentivized, and that's also something that is worth working on. Other projects like Delphia. Delphia is like an algorithm that is trained by many participants to beat the market from private data. So basically you share your credit card data, your bank data in a way that, of course, is secured. And you can train that algorithm, and it has an impact on the decision of that algorithm, and maybe trade the market for profits because it finds some alpha, basically. So this is just experiments, but I think once we succeed to have, like, first the right infrastructure to build this kind of experiments, that's what we're doing, KP4. So, but also have the right use cases at scale. I mean, that's going to unlock a lot of new users coming into the space, and that's pretty exciting.
Cool. And wrapping it up?
I think the storage and compute networks, like Akash, obviously, I think there's like a still, I'd say, really underrated, or maybe like still has a lot of unlocked value, which will be unlocked in the future, especially once the edge computing methods and like the individual compute power in each person's home gets to a point that they can actually do stuff like, I don't know, running the ChatGPT on its own, which we're actually seeing this case lately. I think then we will definitely need trustless and like a decentralized network which connects all of it, and which provides incentive for these people to run these nodes, because they will have an actual use case. Someone will want to use ChatGPT, but they don't want to use the OpenAI's centralized servers and whatsoever. So that's where it's going to go, in my opinion. And this also follows the privacy-preserving systems as well. It's also still in its infancy things like Secret Network or like similar projects, I think they're also great, but still not very well known in terms of what the value they provide or, yeah.
Right. So kind of, and this wasn't on my list of questions, but you're talking about mass adoption and you're talking about people using Web3 and not realizing it's Web3. So I kind of want to formulate a question around that. So in terms of use cases, do you feel like the way to mass adoption is introducing something into the market that is Web3, people don't know it's Web3, and that's just a good way to kind of go about doing it? Or do you feel like it's important for people to understand that this is part of a bigger thing outside of the Web2 world? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, to be honest, and I can safely say this is our vision with Coreum, we believe mass adoption will come from institutions. So that means people don't really need to understand what the difference is between Web 2 and Web 3. They just need to sense that their problem is being solved. So in that way, if we talk about L1s specifically, I really believe in purpose-built layer 1s, because they really allow this these chains to have, you know, high throughput and all of the buzzwords that come with the Cosmos, right? That's why I'm excited to be here. But yeah, we believe adoption will come from institutions, and that's why the more tools we have for this, you know, large-scale institutions to adopt blockchain, I think it's the better. And in that sense, the use cases that I was talking about, you know, event ticketing, I was talking about custom reward payments. These are just surface-level use cases. Like, if anything, you can take Web 2 use cases and update it to Web3. The ChatGPT example is a good one. For example, you interact with the interface, it's very familiar, right? It feels like a web browser or a chat interface. You put a prompt, you get a reply. So it's very user-friendly, but then people take it a step forward, right? Like some projects take the OpenAI API and then build an even easier interface for people to get better prompts, right? So I think that it's the same way with blockchains, right? Like we could think of ChatGPT, the base model, as a layer 1, and then these other applications built on top of it that makes it even more easier as dApps that are built on it. I like to think of it that way.
Right.
Yeah, I think from a technical perspective, people don't need to know how things work so much in the background, like that is Web3. That being said, I think the cool thing of Web3 is that users can have a role to play in building the product through things like DAOs and things like that. And that aspect is I think, a huge plus of the Web3 thing. So,
Any final thoughts before I move on to the next question?
I also agree, but also from a developer's perspective, it is also important to abstract away the lower level details as well, because we need to develop more and more dApps, which will lead to use cases. But if we want to onboard more developers, we also have to abstract away the lower level details, which is, I think, still missing in many of the projects. As an L1 co-founder, I also see this as a huge problem, which we're also trying to address.
I was going to add something really quick. I think the power of people being able to understand how Web3 differentiates for big tech and just overall Web2, because they can be a part of the success, right? Like that's why Web3 projects have an educational approach to it, because they grow with their community. And I feel like even if we believe institutions are going to drive mass adoption, like people that are early in the protocol, sorry, not early, but you know, they are part of the community. They have a stake on it, and they know they're going to be part of that success. And it's not centralized, as we know. It's decentralized. Yeah.
Right. So kind of within the same vein, we're talking about kind of Web 2, Web 3. When you kind of examine the Web 2 landscape, you know, you come across numerous free services, right? Free in quotes, like Gmail, Twitter, YouTube, ChatGPT, just to mention a few. Now the latest trend is, you know, Meta's Threads. Any Threads users out here? I'm still trying to get my head around it. It seems just like it's a weird Twitter. I don't know. But it's commonly believed that, you know, free is favorable, right? It's free. However, there's an age-old adage that suggests if a product is free, there's a high likelihood that you, as the user, are the actual product, right? Selling data. So considering the availability and, more importantly, the usability of these free Web 2 products, how can crypto democratize these services and render them genuinely free or ultimately affordable? Big question.
Yeah.
Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so it's a huge question, but I think the thing we have, and that is pretty new, the thing we developed through crypto is that there is tokens now. And tokens, they empower the open source vision, and they give the financial incentives to contribute to something that is open source. And by contributing to something that is open source and something that is decentralized, let's say we can use blockchain and different protocols as, let's say, minimally extractive coordinators. So they in a way, so they can enable these use cases, for example, social networks you mentioned, they can enable that in a way that is minimally extractive. So it's fully open sourced, it's fully transparent, it's a protocol, basically. But still, you have all the economic incentives embedded to maintain, to develop such protocol. And also to incentivize developers to come and to make that better than private companies can do. And this is, I think it's has exponential potential. And I think that eventually the open source vision will succeed, not because it's just ideologically better, but because economically it makes sense for an individual to contribute to open source code and to decentralize solutions rather than join a private company that is controlling all the IP and all the data and everything. So I just think we have embedded the right economic incentives thanks to token, and we are developing the right primitives to onboard and incentivize the brightest minds to contribute to such technology.
Yeah, I also
Snaps to that, huh, guys?
Yeah.
Give us some snaps. Go ahead.
Yeah, the open source aspect is really important, I guess, because right now, as an open source developer, or maybe like 10 years ago, you didn't really have any incentive other than some kudos from the community. But now you can actually track the whole progress, everyone's contribution, and get some payments or some kind of value out of it. I think this is the first part, and also the privacy-preserving systems again will play a huge role in this. I also kind of keep them in the same basket with the blockchain technologies because they really don't mean a lot in terms of mass adoption on their own. But if we actually utilize these kinds of protocols like ZK proofs or even like fully homomorphic encryption types of things, we can actually have people's data. We can prove to the people that their data is in fact not circulating around unencrypted, tied to them and whatnot. Of course, this will take some time, but I think that's also like a really important aspect to go from the web to don't do evil to can't do evil kind of approach.
Right.
Yeah. I was going to add something really simple to continue what you were saying. So you have open source, and then it brings modularity, right? The ability to grab code that you didn't do and implement it to your applications. And then you have on-chain data. And all of these things, ultimately what they do is they provide you with more business model ideas, right? You have more to play with as a business in crypto, with tokens as well. And that's ultimately what it is. I think that's the key difference.
Yeah, I was just going to say, going back to the free thing, I think there's nothing wrong. There's nothing inherently wrong with charging for a service. But what we can do is just try to create products that are owned by the community, things like that. That's where we can improve on.
So kind of pivoting a little bit, but in the same vein, I feel like it would do us a disservice. We're talking about use cases, which means usability of a product at some point. I do want to talk about the crypto industry and UX. Do you feel like the crypto industry has a UX problem? Do we need to take UX more seriously? Because if you look at Web 2, you can just jump right on and go, right? Like Threads, it took me 1 second and I had an app up and going. So from your opinions, do you feel like the crypto industry has a UX problem that would help increase additional use cases?
I would say definitely. Like I'm working on an end user app, and it's onboarding users is very difficult. You have to, there's several different tokens involved. You have to pay fees, all that stuff. So there's a lot of work still to be done on that side.
Who would you say is, from your guys' top of minds, who do you think, or maybe some projects that are doing a fantastic jobs in user experience and within their projects?
For me, DAO.
DAO?
DAO is amazing, yeah. It's super easy to use.
Yeah, I think Osmosis is a good example. Of course, there are like a lot of room for improvement, but in terms of like Dex, what else can it give to you? So it's a great example, and this is something we have been discussing with my partner. Actually, she's like a UX researcher, and she's been telling me that this is actually like a huge problem because we can't even have simple wallets that we can, like a normal, regular user, do simple transactions. They need to see a bunch of different hash IDs, and they don't know what they are, but they don't have to know. So it needs to be, but also that's, I think, like a security and reliability problem also. Without having those, giving a good UX is really not easy because they need to trust at some point to the app.
Cool. Oh, did you have something?
Well, I think it's the real problem is UX versus security, because having to go to certain steps that are necessary to, for example, create a wallet, it's a bit constraining for UX designers to create a very seamless flow. Like, for example, you cannot click on "you forgot your password" and you get your your passphrase, right? Because then we would be storing it. So I think that's the battle we are addressing. I do think it's going to get better. It's an early industry, right? So I definitely think it's something that we're looking into. But for example, there are projects that, like Trust Wallet or WebAuth, and those entry points, I still believe they are important, and even exchanges, they are the entry point to the industry right now, and I do respect them in that sense. But at some point, like I said, it's going to be like you don't even realize you're interacting with Web3. It's going to feel natural, and that's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe just to jump on the thread aspect, thread subject. I think there is another story that Zuckerberg, he announced that he's going to be using a decentralized technology that is called, if I remember well, Social Pub, that was developed by W3C in 2018. And this technology basically is decentralized and enable you to have all your followers and your following the same in every different app. Maybe you could comment from Twitter a photo in Instagram, and Zuckerberg is going to use that. So maybe he's the one who will solve the UX problem, but I don't think so. But definitely maybe something to be inspired there, because the apps are awesome and there is a network effect already, so maybe we can kind of be pirates and hijack his initiative if he's going in the wrong way. Let's hope so, but no.
Cool. So we only have about 2 minutes or so left. So I'm going to do a lightning round. We're going to try to keep it fun, fast, and fresh. I don't know, 4 Fs. So let's go. I'll kind of start at the end here and just kind of run down. So favorite current crypto project outside of your own?
Well, we work a lot with Ripple, so I'll say Ripple. Yeah.
Ripple.
NKN.
What was it?
NKN.
NKN.
Yeah, it's the networking layer thing.
Got it.
So we're talking about use cases, and I think stablecoin is the main use cases in crypto besides speculation. So maybe Reflexer, that has, so it's a project on Ethereum that is about ungovernance. So it's about removing the governance from the protocol. And as a stablecoin, it makes a lot of sense. Also, it's collateralized completely by ETH, so it also makes sense. It's not backed by, it's not stable to the dollar, but something else. Basically, it's interesting also to open our minds, because in Cosmos we're very governance intensive, and that's great for good reasons. But for some use cases like stablecoin, it makes sense to be more on the other side and remove the governance. So,
Favorite crypto project?
I'll say Atom, but it'll sound pretty cheesy in this conference probably. But yeah, I really like it due to many of its aspects. And I also kind of like Avalanche. That's also like a really good protocol.
I'm a little bit disheartened because I work at Akash and you guys didn't mention Akash. Come on, guys. What's that all
Akash,
about? Now let's
But
do it again, but say Akash. Favorite crypto project.
Akash.
Akash,
What about you?
Akash.
All right, give it up for these guys.
That's for sure, man. Akash.
Goes without saying. All right, we got about 50 seconds left. Super fast lightning round. Favorite city outside of Berlin? Lightning.
Rome.
I was going to say Rome as well.
Oh, 2 Romes.
Oh, really? Neuchâtel.
I'll say Istanbul.
Istanbul. Oh, that's good. All right, and the last one. Is this the best panel you've ever been on? Yes or no?
Yes.
Obviously.
Yes.
All right, these guys
Sure.
know. Let's give a big round of applause for our guests here today. Thank you guys for Martin, Dennis, Fabio, Theo. Thank you for joining our session.